Story. Baranor got some screen time in Shadows of War, but he was squarely in the love interest of a side character role. This time around, he is the focal point of destruction and mayhem. Since Baranor does not possess a ring of power, is behind enemy lines and has few allies to speak of, he needs to wage warfare in a more conventional style, with mercenaries. As luck would have it, the head of the local mercenary camp is his long-lost brother Circa. Together, they unleash all hell and step-by-step conquer the entire territory. Even though the main quest line is limited to less than 10 missions and there are no cutscenes to speak of, I found myself enjoying the story significantly more than the storyline of the base game. Death. I would be interested to know whether the idea of playing as a mortal came first to the designers at Monolith Productions or whether someone got down the rabbit hole of roguelikes. Because it takes some balls to take one of the base drivers behind the signature system of your game, throw it out of the window. You see, the Nemesis system is quite limited if the player character has only one life. Grunts cannot rise from the endless mass to a higher rank. The player cannot raid a "hopefully we kill that human finally" party. There will be no "oh, we have battled so many times, now it's time to end it" speech that added so much personality to the Shadow series. Going all the way to roguelike land was a necessity. Death still means something. It does not only punish the player by loss of progression, it adds stakes. It increases the thrill of combat, and because of that, having a single life without the ability to load was the right call. Originality. So many aspects have been reused from the base game that the previous DLC, Blade of Galadriel, felt a bit of a phone-in effort. The Desolation of Mordor fixes that with a lot of original content. A good example to illustrate the change in approach is the map. Desert biome containing echoes of ancient civilizations. The Egypt aesthetic is smoothly combined with threats of the fantastic by the introduction of sandworms. While the map could have been larger, I take an organically laid out, more compact map, packed with content over a sprawling but decidedly empty map, filled with busywork any day of the week. A similar approach was used to design the character and equipment progression. These are going to be covered later, as they merit their own separate section. The important thing to take away from this section is that noticeable effort has been exerted to create something that expands the Shadow of War experience. Roguelike. While deploying roguelike mechanics might be the only organic way to introduce a mortal to the Shadow franchise, the fact alone doesn't necessarily mean the Desolation of Mordor is a good roguelike. One of the larger challenges is to strike balance between progression and difficulty. It must be possible to achieve the end state of the story, even on the first run, but it must be exceedingly difficult. Death is not a punishment as much as a measure of progress. It provides a chance to take stock and replan. Death also resets, provides a space to practice tools and abilities obtained in the last run in a safer, easier, already understood environment of the start areas. The Desolation of Mordor fails on almost all of these spectacularly. The only new enemy encountered in the expansion is more of an environmental hazard. Because of that, and due to the grindy nature of the base game, the player already knows how to deal with all types of enemies the game throws at them. A set of tools and progression in the story is retained upon death. However, both move the needle of the challenge of the end goal very little, rendering their presence moot. On my first playthrough, I have unlocked all player skills, conquered all outposts and the fortress, which is the main objective of the DLC. This took 3.5 hours. To obtain the achievement for a better score, I have done a second run immediately. It took only 58 minutes to conquer all outposts and the fortress for the gold rating. I have absolutely no inclination to do another run, as there is nothing else to unlock or to beat. As far as I'm concerned, even Doom, the 2016 version, had more repeatability in its arcade mode. Be aware. RPG systems. Out of all the Shadow series games, character progression makes the most sense in universe in the Desolation of Mordor. Baranor doesn't just start to magically know things because he killed his 212th orc. Instead, he obtains equipment, mercenaries, and uses his increased influence to make the push on the fortress easier. A very similar approach is applied to his inventory. Gone are pieces of equipment of various level and properties. Bernor starts each run with the same set of blades, armor and crossbow. Instead of replacing them, he uses upgrades littered throughout the game world to upgrade stats and add specific effects. The game world reacts to his expanded toolset with increasing the unfortunately still present captain levels. I'm still unsure why these are kept. The only rationale I could come up with was to indicate the amount of health of an opponent before combat is initiated. Anyway, back to the upgrades. Since what drops where is randomized, the upgrades differentiate runs most noticeably. One downside of this inventory system is the loss of equipment sets that did not only change the playstyle considerably, but also altered the looks of the player character. If push comes to shove, I would happily trade those in and continue with the system from the Desolation of Mordor in the next game in the Shadow franchise. Traversal. A bit of context here. I have not finished the last drawn-out section of Shadow of War before I started playing the Desolation of Mordor. After finishing the DLC, I went back to continue the grind. What I found missing immediately was the ease of traversal in the Desolation of Mordor. While Bernor lacks a double jump, the combination of ever-present vents, a glider, and a grapple makes traversal a piece of cake. The best Stallion can hope for is that a Drake wanders into the area for a quick ride. This is handy not just from traveling from point A to B, it's super helpful when the player character is surrounded and you just need to scale a wall to get a little breathing room. Stallion can scale everything, sure, but there is no dedicated button for the action. What ends up happening at the most inopportune time is a half-assed circus performance with Stallion vaulting orcs left and right. Bernor in stark contrast just performs his best Batman impression and gets the heck out of there. If the Shadow series is continued, I hope the developers deploy these gadgets to the next installment. Closing thoughts. Now this is much better. Contrary to the previous DLC, The Blade of Galadriel, which I felt should have been part of the base experience, the Desolation of Mordor distills, expands, and enhances. Some of the edges of the excessive grind are sanded away. Traversal is improved, making the combat flow more natural. Story content doesn't overstay its welcome. The only sore point is the price. Given the history of what has been done with and to the franchise up until this point, I would have loved a price point of $5. My recommendation gradually evaporates and ceases to exist at the $10 or Euro price point. If the progress made in the design of this expansion is flushed out to a full-length game, I would recommend the resulting product at a significantly higher price point without fail. I hope you'll have a wonderful day. Thank you for your time.